The 1st of March, 2026. And yesterday and throughout the evening, I still have been going through so much research on my theories regarding this magnetoelectric, hydrodynamic, fluid cosmos. But I'm going to take a bit of a break from that today, because even the dissertation that I'm working on, it's at 77 pages and expanding. And it really gets into a lot more into, again, this electromagnetic reality. It gets into so many different explanations regarding molecules or matter, particles, whatever you want to call it, and but maybe more visual representations would be better, and then some information about international news as well. I'm going to get into it because, my God, we had Maduro, who was taken out in January. February, it was El Mencho, sorry. And now it is, I want to get his name right. Probably right here. Khomeini, Ayatollah Khomeini. I think that's how you pronounce it, but I just want to confirm. But anyway, start of March. And yeah, Ali Khamenei. There are a lot of people internationally that are celebrating people taking out Khamenei. He was absolutely a dictator. And there are many people that are likely going to flee, should resign. And it's up to the people now to take control of their government and their country, so that there doesn't need to be more of an involvement of NATO or what we call allies. And so I'm going to say that I don't think that people should be working with Netanyahu. I don't trust the guy. I think that he's absolutely a dictator, and I think he's someone that should be in jail, to be clear. Nothing else besides jail. And Smotrich and Ben Gvir and others who are dictators acting like tyrants. And so when the U.S. is involved in these types of actions, and they're aligned with or partnering with Netanyahu, again, it's not a good look. It's not a friggin' good look. But and again, there's other partners that we could be working with in and around the Middle East to gain information, info ops regarding the Iranian regime. Anyway, so I wanted to get those out of the way. So this has been circulating regarding Canada. So every Canadian should read this twice. So we rank first in uranium, first in potash, second in nickel, third in oil, fifth in gold, first in fresh water. So many other things that Canada brings to the table. And we're doing so poorly regarding the comparisons of other G7 countries, despite what mainstream state-funded media, propaganda media is saying. And the elected officials that we have within the House of Commons, they are lying. This shouldn't be shocking to people. And I don't even know if they even realize that they're lying or not. Like, these people are not, they're not smart. And anyways, I stand by that. Yes, and somehow we're told we're too poor to cut taxes, too broke to build homes, too weak to compete, too small to matter. It took historic levels of incompetence and ideological sabotage to bury a country this blessed. Imagine where Canada would be if we were actually allowed to win. We've had people rotating seats within cabinet now for over a decade, and it's people that are completely incompetent, and there's no checks and balances like there is in the US. So they do have a better model. Is it perfect? No, but it's much better than Canada, where they have their Senate who grill the nominations that the president brings forward, and they ask them questions about so many things, personal and work related, and holding people again accountable. And we don't have that in Canada, so people have never had to answer to people like Patty Hajdu and Vera Etches and Chrystia Freeland and Marco Menachino, Bill Blair, Mark Miller. Oh my, I could go on. Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, Elizabeth May. They've never had to have like a question period where they actually get grilled on the complete incompetence that they've enabled and voted on, and the removal of our rights and freedoms, et cetera, in the process, and hollowing out the middle class as they get richer. And anyway.
Is hate speech? Yes, obviously. People say terrible things. Well, let's regulate it. Fair enough, because it's hateful. Who defines hate? Well, we'll worry about that later. It's like, no, he won't. That's actually the problem. Here's the answer to who defines hate. Those people that you would least want to have define it. Because sensible people won't have anything to do with that. People who are power mad will gravitate to that domain to make an ethical case to exercise their controlling power over the language of other people. Well, what makes you think that your right to free speech trumps the right of someone to not be offended? I'm talking to you, and the rule is I don't get to offend you. Maybe we could still have a discussion about something difficult. But let's say I'm talking to 10 people. Now I have to make sure that I don't say anything that offends even one of those 10 people. What if I'm talking to 1,000 people? There's going to be someone who's offended at the mere fact that I exist. It's an impossible standard. You don't get to say anything because no one should be offended. Well, then you can't negotiate your way through the future. Who thinks that? You have to be pathologically naive, which is the kind of naive that you could have grown out of, but you willfully refuse to. And then you impose that blind naivety on everyone else because you don't want to allow them to upset your rosy view of yourself in the world.
All right, this is what they're afraid that you'll figure out. I don't care if Bill C9 never makes it through the Parliament of Canada, okay? The fact that they ever had the fucking audacity to bring this forward tells you everything you need to know. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, Bill C9 is the Online Hate Speech Act in Canada. It would give the federal government aggressive new powers to charge you for any posts online that they decided was motivated by hate. They'd be prosecuting people based on what they think their feelings were without Attorney General approval and passing that authority to local tribunals who can interpret hate however they want, all while not once defining what hate speech really is. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. You don't float a bill like that by accident. You float it to test compliance, to see how asleep people really still are. Every cycle, it's the same pattern. They push a little bit further, watch who gets loud, watch who stays silent, and then they move the line again. That's their playbook. And most people, they just shrug and they say, oh, it won't pass. Yeah, until it does. Exactly. Because tyranny doesn't kick down your door overnight. It knocks politely at first, and then it rewrites the rules while you're arguing semantics. And that's what Bill C9 is. It's a thermometer for your obedience. And they're not just measuring how much control they have, they're measuring how much you'll give them willingly. And here's the part that people aren't ready to hear. They don't need to win every vote. They just need to numb you enough so that you don't notice that they're trying again. And the second you normalize, oh, it probably won't pass, you've already lost. Okay, because freedom doesn't die from laws, it dies from apathy. Okay, so look, I'm not here to preach politics. I'm here to talk about how to build freedom and sovereignty and exit the traps of society, because while everyone's watching bills, some of us are building something that they can't legislate, income that can't be frozen, platforms that they can't censor, communities you don't have to ask permission to build. And that's what we're doing inside Bet's Nation. We got a few hundred of us who are tired of watching our governments screw us and started building our own leverage. And if you're done trusting the same machine that tests your obedience every election cycle, then comment the word bets below in the comments and we will show you how to build a business that nobody can fuck with, that actually sets you.
It is a good message. And despite what you think of Jordan Peterson regarding his support for what's going on in Israel and Palestine, etc., he has helped a lot of people, including myself. And he put himself out there many years ago, not only with his classroom lectures, which were so brilliant, you know, and then again fighting these bills again that remove our freedoms away from us, and people don't understand just how serious that is, and there's already been there's just so many controls with regards to the power that this government has on its people. And even now, Mark Miller and others with the nerve, the audacity to try to put forth measures or bills, policies where they can essentially have corporations that they work with be exempt from any punishment if they break the friggin' law. And even with the military, we're literally looking at now and pushing for, and again, taxpayer funded, to have immigrants be serving within our military. And I just can't believe that this is being considered, and we have the most woke DEI incompetent chief of defense staff in the history of Canada, and which is unfortunate because there's so many incredible people that could have easily taken that job and did a better job. And but again, it's state-funded media, and I'm talking about Global TV and W5. They again ruined the reputations of people that deserved those positions because they weren't fully conforming to the narrative that Privy Council Canadian leadership wanted to push during COVID regarding the mandates and the lockdowns and things like that. So what a mess. What a mess. Okay. Here we go.
It's America's fault that Iran is currently under the current regime occupation. I mean, you know the history, right? So you had the Shah. There was a democratically elected Mossadegh. I always mispronounce it, right? But I was close enough, right? That was close. And then he wants to nationalize the oil. Some goofy stuff happens. We get involved and displace him and put the Shah back in when he's sick, super unpopular, and then you get radicalism, right? So I'm not one to overplay into America bad. This was a royal screw up on behalf of the American Central Intelligence Agency and the British intelligence. So when you say, what do we have to do to regime change? I'm like, maybe we should sit this one out, let the Iranian people figure it out themselves. It's America's fault that...
Unfortunately, they hadn't figured it out.
Daydream, I fell asleep amid the flowers for a couple
Albert Einstein, everything is energy.
of hours.
Marie Curie, the invisible forces of nature are revealed through energy.
On a beautiful day.
Nikola Tesla. Oh, sorry, Matt is sending me something. Anyway, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy.
Daydream,
Max Planck, every form of matter is energy.
I dream of you amid the daydream.
Anyway, that was so good. All right, more. Yeah, I'll give more on Tesla because I love it. I got into so many things here, so let me see if I can pull this up. There we go. All right. So Nikola Tesla's famous attributed quote on the subject is, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, universe, this cosmos contained, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Even Stephen Hawking in his paper in, it was 1963 or 1966, but he talked about this being a flat universe. And so what I think he meant by that is this, the flat plane of inertia, the habitable zone where we live, being that what he was talking about. While widely celebrated, the quote's historical origin is debated. It is often traced back to a conversation with Ralph Bergstresser, who claimed Tesla spoke these words to him. Regardless of its word-for-word accuracy, the sentiment aligns with Tesla's life's work in alternating current, radio, and resonance. Resonance being what I push for. The three pillars of Tesla's perspective. Energy. Tesla viewed the universe as a vast reservoir of non-physical forces rather than just a collection of solid objects. Frequency. He believed everything has a unique signature or tune, from the smallest subatomic particles to the largest celestial bodies. Vibration. This refers to the oscillatory motion that creates waves. Tesla's experiments with mechanical oscillations and Tesla coils were based on finding the resonant vibration of objects. Modern interpretations. Oh, too high here. Quantum mechanics. Modern physics echoes this view, showing that what we perceive as solid matter is actually vibrating energy field and wave functions. String theory. Anyways, at the fundamental level, string theory proposes that all particles are tiny vibrating strings of energy. I believe they're vibrating particles, vibrating matter. And disruptions within these fields are what causes the waves, or the pushing and the pulling. Metaphysics, the quote is frequently used in spiritual contexts to suggest that thoughts and emotions also carry specific frequencies that interact with reality. Anyway, I don't know about that. So then I talk about color, frequency, and sound vibration. So color and sound are perceived as a result of frequency and vibration. Though they operate through different physical mechanisms. Color is light frequency. Color is our brain's interpretation of different frequencies of electromagnetic waves. These waves do not require a medium and can travel through, and they say travel through a vacuum. I get into that though. I explain. Sound is mechanical vibration. Sound is the perception of mechanical vibrations, pressure waves, traveling through a medium like air, water, or solids. So wave types, mechanical, longitudinal. This is just from Google. Sound vibration, medium requires air, water, etc. Frequency range, 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Sensory organ, ears, eardrum vibration. For color, wave type, electromagnetic transverse, but again, it's the removal of the electrons and the excitation that creates light. Okay, anyway, so medium travels through. It says it travels through empty space, like light does not travel, but it can as well. But I get into that. I already say. So from 430 to 770 terahertz. So there's audible and inaudible sound, and there's visible and non-visible light spectrums, like to our senses. So we experience a lot more, but we're only able to perceive like a limited bandwidth, or whatever you want to call it. The Tesla perspective, Tesla's philosophy emphasized that because both are essentially oscillatory phenomena, they follow similar mathematical laws. This has led research and artists to create mappings between the two, such as Isaac Newton's color wheel, which aligned with the 7 colors of the rainbow with the 7 notes of a musical scale. I've already talked about this in previous videos, musical notes mathematically mapped to specific colors. So I say light travels better without the friction of oxygen. And again, sorry for my terminology. You are absolutely right. In fact, light doesn't just travel better in a vacuum, it travels at the absolute maximum speed. When we talk about friction light encounters, we are usually referring to refraction and scattering. While friction is a term we usually save for solid objects rubbing together, for light, the drag is caused by atoms and molecules like oxygen and nitrogen getting in the way. The speed gap, the speed of light in a vacuum is a universal constant denoted as c. When light enters a medium like air or water, it interacts with the electrons of the atoms it passes, which slows it down. In a vacuum, in air, in glass, about 33% slower than in a vacuum. Again, remove with the oxygen being removed in a high pressure environment. Anyways, when oxygen interferes, air is an empty space. It's a soup of molecules. When light hits these molecules, two things happen. Refraction, the light bends and slows down because it has to interact with the electromagnetic fields of the oxygen and nitrogen atoms. Scattering, some frequencies of light, like blue, hit gas molecules and bounce off in different directions. This interference is exactly why the sky looks blue to us, but the blackness of space is visible once you leave the atmosphere, which again, I say you cannot. So again, this is just Google AI. I'm not going to fix it. Okay, so yeah, and then I've talked about the gases too, how they interacting with the luminaries, they can change their colors and become like luminescent, or like that's where we like the aurora borealis, the northern lights, etc. All right, was there anything else from here I want to talk about? We're getting close to the spring equinox. Equal amount of day and night in what we call the northern and southern regions of the earth. When the sun enters into Aries and the new moon enters into Aries as well. And I think that's important. Okay, so here we have here. On March 19th, 2026, the moon is indeed right in the cusp of moving into Aries. The border breakdown, the moment of the new moon, the astronomical new moon conjunction occurs on March 19th, 2026. Late evening, March 18th in North America. At this exact second, the moon is at 28 degrees Pisces in the tropical zodiac. I've said this before, but we have decided to make the calendar system, like we use the solar system. A lot of people do use the lunar system. And so the zodiac, the constellations, the zodiac signs, there's some that are larger than others, and where it takes the luminaries longer to move through them, not through them, but like past them, but like closer, more localized within this, anyways. And so what we've done is we've just put like divided by 30 degrees. And so where we say, look, so when we make it look like the sun and the moon, they actually travel like equally, like the equal amount of time within these constellations. When Virgo, for example, it's one of the larger constellations, and it can take like upwards of, I think, 42 days for the sun to move through it. And then, for example, like Scorpio is like, I think it's like 19 days or something like that. And Ophiuchus might be 16, or it might have those reversed. It might be Ophiuchus 19 and Scorpio 16. And anyways, I hope that makes sense. And the rapid shift, the moon travels about 13 degrees per day and the sun 15 degrees per day, which is approximately 1,000 miles per hour, a little over that. I think it's like 1,030 miles per hour on average, depending on what ring path it's traveling on. And which is why we have the 24-hour clock. And 24,000 miles circumference. Again, I think that they're misinterpreting the sun's travel path and the boundaries, the confines of the travel path, and how far it extends or interacts with this cosmos, and not the actual size of the Earth itself. I think we're mixing that up. Okay, so the moon officially enters the sign of Aries on the 19th of March by the afternoon. So I'm correct. The moon is almost in Aries for much of the day, what we say it is in many astronomical and astrological systems. The evening of March 19th, as the very slender one-day-old crescent moon becomes visible near Venus, it is physically and zodiacally positioned in Aries. And again, I'm saying that it's the new moon is in Aries, entering into Aries, and the sun entering into Aries during that same time. Okay. Yep, that's good enough. I'm going to go back to Instagram because I shared a lot of interesting videos, science and physics ones. As energy is transferred efficiently only when frequencies match. So this is 412 hertz. Namaste. I'll play it again. On the same frequency. When it's not on the same frequency, doesn't move. When it's on the same frequency, then it moves. And that's how particles travel. Here's another cool one. This is what resonance really looks like when physics takes control. One frequency, total transformation. Resonant frequency demonstration shows how objects vibrate most powerfully at their natural frequency, even us. Every system that can oscillate from a swing to a wine glass to a bridge has specific frequencies it naturally prefers. When you drive the system at exactly that frequency, energy accumulates with each cycle and the amplitude grows dramatically. Drive it at any other frequency and the motion stays small. This mismatch is why random pushes on a swing barely move, but timed pushes at its natural rhythm build huge swings with minimal effort. The wine glass demonstration makes this visible. A glass has a natural frequency you can hear when you tap it. A singer or speaker producing sound at the exact pitch causes the rim to vibrate with growing intensity. If the amplitude gets large enough, the glass shatters, not because the sound is louder overall, but because the frequency perfectly matches and energy keeps adding up in phase. Resonance tubes show the same principle with sound waves. A tuning fork vibrates at one set frequency, and an air column has resonant frequencies based on its length. Adjust the water level until the column length matches a resonant mode, and the sound suddenly amplifies as a standing wave forms. Looking into like radar and sonar and stuff like that too, it's all very interesting. So the effect disappears at non-resonant lengths, even though the fork vibrates identically. This phenomena explains everything from why buildings collapse in earthquakes at certain frequencies to how musical instruments amplify specific notes. Resonance is the reason precise frequency matching creates outsized effects across physics and engineering. This was cool too. I'm just showing you things that I found interesting. So I don't know how you pronounce that. Is it Euler? E-U-L-E-R. Euler's disk spins with mesmerizing speed, reaching up to 6,000 RPM and generating rising tones that exceed 150 hertz before abruptly stopping.
We set it spinning. Let's see what happens. We set it spinning. Let's see what happens.
Oh, this was another good one.
Okay, right, let's go. Ready? Hold on. Right, turn it on for me.
I hope you get electrocuted.
Move that metal thing away from it. Move that metal thing away. Move it away. Yeah, move it away.
Oh.
That's a cool thing. Look at that.
Okay, right, let's go. Ready? Hold on. Right, turn it on for me.
I hope you get electrocuted.
Okay, so you've never seen static electricity taught like this. Cups literally lift off his head.
Move that metal thing away from it. Move that metal thing away. Move it away. Yeah, move it away.
Oh.
Anyway, I thought it was cool. This is another one. Okay, so Tech Talks. This high school student learned how to make gravity irrelevant using sound. This isn't anti-gravity, it's something just as wild. Acoustic levitation uses focused sound wave, not magnetics or tricks. Anyway, not entirely true. To hold tiny objects in midair without touching them. An array of 60 ultrasonic transducers fires sound at 40 kilohertz, far above human hearing. And when two sets of waves collide, they form a standing wave with invisible bands of high and low pressure stacked in the air. Sound familiar? Lightweight styrofoam beads get trapped as the pressure at the pressure nodes, where upward acoustics forces balance the particles, and sideways force pull the object back if it drifts, similar to a marble settling in a bowl. It's equalizing within the medium. An Arduino Nano generates the precise signal. A motor driver boosts it to power all 60 transducers at once, and the geometry of the array determines where those pressure pockets form. Shifting the phase timing across different transducers moves the pockets around, which means a levitated particle. I've talked about the Searle effect generator so many times. I would highly recommend taking a look at that. Yeah, so it doesn't matter the mass or the density of those objects or those, whatever they were called, styrofoam balls. It had to do with temperature, pressure, energy. Oh, this was a good one too.
I think
Okay. Energy debate heats up. This is from Men Set Standards. In the street interview, a man argues that fossil fuels remain essential because of their reliability and the technological improvements that make them cleaner than before. Again, I don't call them fossil fuels at all. It's petroleum. He suggests that without them, people would quickly realize how dependent modern society is on consistent, affordable energy sources. Anyway.
fossil fuels are better for the environment than people realize, because without them, we would have cut all the trees down by now. I think they also save the whales, because before we were using fossil fuels, we're using whale oil to make everything. And I think people who wanted to save the whales should be happy that we use fossil fuels.
Okay, interesting. So are you completely against like what they're supporting, or do you think it's just
Like LNG, liquefied natural gas, I think would be optimal.
not like a realistic outcome?
Most of the climate change issue is about controlling our energy resources. Let's say they get off of fossil fuels and they put everybody on electricity, and we're all using electricity for everything. Well, all that has to be mined. Most of it's mined by slave labor in communist countries that are owned by dictators at very violent places. And I don't see why that's a better energy resource than fossil fuels. They make people money who take it out of the ground rather than being forced out of the ground. And there's a lot less exploitation involved in it, I think. The scientists who say climate change is real only get grant money if they say climate change is real. A lot of the scientists who disagree with climate change, all their budgets are taken away and they're blacklisted. There's a big movement to change our energy resources, like I said, and if you change our energy resources, you change who controls the power in the world. I think fossil fuels are better for the environment.
Fletcher Prouty talks about it, fossil fuels being petroleum. Share that if you want to look at it. It's one of my shorter videos. I think I have it down to like 8 minutes on one of my my Rumble videos, Don189, or it might have been when I called myself just analyst. Anyway, this guy, Ronald Bernard, I had not heard about him until the last 24 hours, so I started looking into some of his interviews, and a former banker, and anyway, he exposed a lot regarding the underworld and the deep state and who runs the world and just how disgusting they possibly are. So I think it's important. His first interview is more like how his life started to develop. And then his second interview where he really gets into the meat, and I'm probably going to share that one as well. And so this might, again, be a longer video than you expected. But here we go. And this is his page.
Ronald.
Yes.
Thank you for being with me today.
You're
We're
welcome.
going to have a great conversation. So just to start off, do you mind introducing yourself for those who don't know you yet?
Yeah, of course. My name is Ronald Bernard. Well, as you know, I live in the Netherlands, and my whole life I'm an entrepreneur. And there is a bit of an unusual thing about my life that I share always with people, that I have a first life and I have a second life. And that's because of a near-death experience. I have one moment in my life that my heart was stopped beating. So that's why I say I have a first life and a second life. And in my first life, I was quite different than now. In my second life, I'm a social, responsible entrepreneur, serving people, serving local economy. Mm. And in my first life, I was, so to speak, a bankster. A bankster is actually nothing more than a top criminal in the financial world. That's how I ended my career. And official had some titles like trading in
currencies like dollars, German marks in that time. Also dealing in deposit trading for interest rates. And we had also wealth management. So moving the big money of the people tax-free to locations where they are safe with their money, because paying taxes for the normal working class. So that's just in a short way what I did in my life.
And so what changed that in that moment where you nearly died? What changed that led you into the second life?
The end of my first life was not really chosen by myself. It was a very tough situation I was in, a lot of pressure, and I didn't know how to escape the system where I was committed to. So afterwards you can say that it was a sort of given present that my heart stopped and they reanimate me, they bring me back to life. And during the near-death experience, I had a deep touch in the direction of nature. I found out by a lot of testimonies afterwards, because I thought that it was all not true, what was happening with me. But in this experience, I get really in touch with nature. I saw planet Earth, so to speak, but then in a much more beautiful way. And I could even, I was in connection with nature. So the whole feeling, the interaction was becoming one. And this experience of being really in touch with nature was the first touch I have with nature in my whole life. Because in my first life, I was hating life. I was hating nature. I was only in the way of heading to full destruction of whatever I can destruct. So for me, this was a real deep touch. Something was going inside of me, and it was not, I couldn't erase it anymore.
All right. This video is going to be long anyways. So I'm going to show the Fletcher Prouty video I did. Okay, so what the title is Petroleum is Not a Fossil Fuel. Freaking how many years ago? Over 2 years ago.
One animal. Yeah. Is it a mineral? Is it a mineral like any other mineral?
I posted a better one too.
Is that how it, what would you say? How did it, what's the origin of it? You see, when they first found petroleum, because they were beginning to make motors and needed on axles of wheels on railroad trains and all that sort of thing. And remember, trains started in the beginning of the 19th century. Then oil went from just a lubricant to a fuel, and it made it valuable. And Rockefeller happened to be the smartest man in the business at the time, but he made most of his money, or much of it, off the transport of the petroleum as well as selling it. But one thing they realized was, because oil is putting a price on oil is like putting a price on a pail of water. You know, there's no initial cost. It's in the ground, and in those days they were, some of it almost what you'd call surface mining the oil. They didn't go down deep. So in order to get the price up, they hit on the idea that they would have to make it appear to be scarce. That boy, after we take the next few barrels out, we're probably going to have to close as well. You know, that kind of thing. But a very fortuitous event. In 1892, there was a convention in Geneva of scientists to determine what organic substances are. Well, the definition of organic is a substance with hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. And so it's usually a living substance, a tree. You analyze a dead tree, hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, and grass, and so on, living things, animals, we are, hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. So at this Geneva Convention, Rockefeller took advantage of sending some scientists over who said oil, petroleum, is hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. Therefore, it must be derived from the spoiling, the rotting of formerly living matter.
Like trees. I think trees being the significant one. And even with the drilling, how far down they go, the comment is correct regarding like having to dig for oil or drill, not dig, but drill for oil at ridiculous depths at like over 28,000 feet, over 30,000 feet. And so very interesting.
And playing the game properly, when this scientific convention was over, they defined oil as a residue from formerly living matter. Well, that makes it a fossil fuel. I don't know why they decided to use the word fossil, but it says formerly living matter, it's fossil. Well, of course, today, and another thing we should know is that there has never been a fossil, a real fossil found below 16,000 feet. And you can't argue at 16,000.
And there's like petrification events, like high heat and high and low heat or cold events that have happened.
There's a level line because someplace the ground sinks and so on, but 16 is what the scientists say, 16,000. We mine oil, or we drill for oil at 30,000, 33,000, 28,000 every day of the week. So right there, we rule it out that it isn't fossil fuel. It's called fossil fuel for the minds of the public to feel that it is an asset that is running out, being depleted. We talk about depletion allowance, which is a lot of, and actually, if you know the world's oil supply, you know that it is not going to run out for an awfully long time. It is the second most prevalent liquid on Earth.
Yep.
And we haven't begun to dig. Well, with all that background, you see, the people in charge of the petroleum business, for perfectly reasonable business things, like any other man in the business, wants to keep his price as high as he can get away with. And the way to do is just say, well, there's no more. We the last barrel is going to cost $1,000, and then it's all done. And they preach that stuff. What bothers me is that in geology books, it's in there. The geologists say it's a fossil fuel. They've been bought. I went to a 4-year federal staff energy seminar run by the government of the United States during the so-called energy crisis. I was the participant that represented the railroad industry. The airline industry was there. Every AA administrative assistant of senators and congressmen was there. The CIA was there, the Defense Department was there, the State Department was there. Sometimes sitting right in front of me in the row would be Henry Kissinger with his friend, the head of Department of Defense. It's too bad I can't put the names with them. But anyway, people like that, top men in the government, sitting there listening to the Federal Staff Energy Seminar. Well, what this was doing is for 4 years, they were teaching a propaganda line to the leading people in this country, and therefore to the leading people in the world, when you include the Schlesingers, Kissinger and Schlesinger, among others.
Yeah, he was a criminal.
The object of it was,
3 years.
as Kissinger used in his own terms when it was time for him to speak, to create a world price for oil. In other words, not 30 cents a gallon here and 90 cents a gallon there, but let's get a world price. That's their goal, and they're trying to do that for wheat and everything else. We don't realize what the controls are, whether it's oil or some of these other things. Almost everything today is being categorized at the highest price they can possibly make it go. And so calling petroleum a fossil fuel is the basis for this system with respect to petroleum. And I don't know if the name Arthur Kantrowitz rings any bell. Arthur Kantrowitz is the head of the Kantrowitz Labs set up by the Avco company near Boston, scientific laboratories. And a great man in the scientific world. And Kantrowitz and I were sitting at a table at this seminar once, and the table happened to be all young college grad PhD geologists. And so just to get a conversation started, I turned to Kantrowitz and I said, Arthur, what do you think about this foolishness of these speakers talking about fossil fuel? And it was kind of put up. He started laughing. He said, you know, that gets me. He says, I don't have a geology degree, but he had 1,000 other degrees. And he said, I don't understand. He said, you'd think that these heads, these other fellows at the table, we did it on purpose, start listening, you know. And he asked, he said, are you gentlemen? He says, you're here at the meeting. Are you gentlemen by any chance geologists? And one fellow, yes, I am. And the other, yeah. He said, well, why don't you tell me? He said, why is oil? You know, and he went on like that. We brought the house down because nobody could argue with Kantrowitz. He like Einstein. People aren't going to. And he told him right there, he said, just drop it. But it's in all the books, in all the papers. But it started from that
evolution
strange
too,
meeting.
even though it's been big embryo has been
A
debunked.
scientific convention. I have a big, thick scientific encyclopedia put out by the Divan Ostrin Company that's about 15 years old now. But it has the whole story of the conference. It doesn't have the Rockefeller part, but it has the whole story of how they straightened out organic chemicals and how it was all figured. And they've got petroleum right in there. Amazing. So,
Yep. Fletcher Prouty, he's exposed a lot. Yeah. The Rockefeller Foundations, the Clinton Foundations, Ford, open source. Ridiculous. Propaganda. Okay, let me see here. I'm going to maybe I'll show part 2 for Ronald Bernard. I don't know if this is going to be in English. I might have to look for another video. We'll see. Fair use.
Ronald, you were previously mentioning the pyramid. I was talking about the top of this pyramid, 8,500 people. Could you tell us about how things operate up there nowadays?
Yes, certainly. These 8,500 people make use of a monetary system, a financial monetary system, which we refer to as money and banks, used in our daily lives. So, the mechanism they use is indeed a system in the shape of a pyramid. So you have the top of 8,000 to 8,500 people, then the layer under them they have created an institution in 1930. This was done from the Netherlands called the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, with headquarters situated in Switzerland. They are the headquarters of the banks and of the financial system. The top 8,500 people gives orders to BIS in Basel, from which it propagates downward through the system to be executed. We know Basel from the Basel agreements. It went wrong with the banks and then we got Basel I, Basel II, Basel III. Some people have heard of the agreements or read about them in the newspaper. That's all about the BIS. So, as I just said, this came into existence in 1930, originating from the Netherlands. And already in 1931 was BIS recognized worldwide by basically all countries to be the headquarters of the financial world. Every central bank is a member of this BIS club. Which is a civil organization, not a governmental one, who have a headquarters agreement that describes in total what the BIS stands for. Its range of power, authorization level, operations and output. When you are reading in these documents what they stand for, they are available on their website. You see how they have incorporated all these rules, recognized worldwide. claiming their independency from Switzerland. The grounds their headquarters are on are independent from the country.
Grondgebied waar het op staat, heeft Zwitserland niks over te vertellen. Er staat
It
ook dat ze
also
in
states
alles
their
onschendbaar zijn.
immunity.
Er staat ook
It also states they are above all worldly rules.
aarde verheven zijn. Dat
Nobody can touch them. They have complete immunity.
volledig immuun.
So, they have a complete immunity from everything on earth.
Van alles wat hier op aarde is.
Furthermore, they have their own police service, so you can't just go in yelling, "You bastards," or something of the sort, because you won't get away with it. To be concise, it's a fully recognized, immune state, beyond the grasp of any rules, inviolable.
Het is ook het instituut
This institute
waar
was
in de
also the
Tweede
location
Wereldoorlog,
during
maar voor
World
de
War
Tweede
I and
Wereldoorlog,
before, in which the
de
so-called
zogenaamde
enemies, the
vijanden
Nazis and their allies met up, in which they traded gold raided from Jewish people of
daar
states or
bijvoorbeeld
other
goud
people.
gingen verhandelen, wat was geroofd van Joodse mensen of van staten of anderen. Dus het is een
BIS is a club
clubje
in which
waar
they are all
iedereen vriendjes met
friends.
elkaar is. En dat
And these
hoofdkantoor
headquarters maintain the
zorgt
monetary
er dus
system
voor
as it is and
dat,
assures the amount
zeg
of
maar, het
currency.
hele monetaire, financieel-economisch systeem verder draaiende wordt gehouden. En het
At the
zorgt er ook
so-called bottom
voor
of the
dat
pyramid,
alle
where
waarden
all
die
value
onderin
is
zitten,
located at the bottom
onderin
means
het
real
leven
life
van
there where
het echte
people
leven,
live,
waar de
where the
mensen
earth
van de
is,
aarde
nature.
leven.
And the
Dat de
real
waarden
value at the
die
bottom of the
onderin de
pyramid
piramide
is being
liggen, de
extorted.
enige echte waarde op aarde, dat die onttrokken wordt. En dat doen ze dus via de
They do this by
financiële
using the
systeem. Dan hebben
financial
ze onder die
system.
centrale bank,
Under the
die
central
BIS,
bank, the
hebben ze
BIS, we find the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. People can read about this in the newspapers, and the World
Ze hebben
Bank.
daar ook de
These
Wereldbank
two
zitten. Het
institutes
zijn
often
twee
help
instituties
countries when
waar
needed.
landen helpen als het nodig is. Wat ze doen, dat is
What they really do
schuldcreatie
is
in
create debt
landen
in these countries in such a
verwezenlijken
way
op een
that they will
manier
never
dat
be
die
able
land
to
nooit
pay
meer
it
terug
off.
kan betalen. Dus kunnen
They
dat
actually
berekenen.
calculate the amount
Hoeveel
needed in
krijgt
order
iemand
to
lenen
ensure
dat hij
this
weet dat hij dat
fact,
nooit meer terugbetaalt. En dan krijg je
enabling
steeds
them
meer
to
druk op een
increase the
land,
grip they have
een
on a
land
country or
dat
continent
grondstoffen,
such
tweede
as Africa,
continent,
which is rich
Afrika
in
is rijk,
resources,
zeer rijk
very
in
rich.
grondstoffen. Maar dan kan
Through
je
their
dus via
connections with
die
friends,
multinationals
multinationals, they can extort the value from the countries by
land wat
allowing
in
them to
schuld
pay in
zit,
kind,
nooit meer een
resources for the debt they'll
aflossing
never be
daarvoor
able to
naast
resolve.
grondstoffen geeft.
So, they pay with labor,
Ja.
slave labor you could say, I
Het enige
suppose.
wat je dan
Yes,
nodig
and
hebt,
the only
is dat je
requirement is
een
buying
land
off the top
kocht
within
op
such a
een of andere
country,
manier.
blackmail them with
Kan
children,
via
or
staten
severance pay,
papieren of
you name it,
gouden
you
handboek,
buy them
maakt
off
niet
and
uit,
then
iets
you
maar wat
own
ze
them.
willen. Die koop je en daarmee heb je dus eigenlijk een land op zak. Dat is die
So,
laag onder de
this was the
BIS,
first layer under
Wereldbank
BIS,
en
the World Bank and IMF. The next layer would be the
daaronder
central
krijg je
banks.
centrale banken.
Again,
Dat zijn
all civil
allemaal
organizations,
IT-organisaties
independent
die niks
from
met overheid te
governmental
maken hebben.
organizations,
Daar zit inmiddels
amongst
ook de
which,
centrale bank Europa
nowadays,
in.
we have the Central Bank of Europe. We used to also have the national banks in this layer, but they have been demoted to being side offices of the Central Bank of Europe.
Where do we find the city in this story?
You mean the city of London? This is also a free state.
As in Vatican City?
Yes, Vatican City. There is also such a place in Washington. There are many free states in the world at the same level, like the BIS in Basel. Vatican Bank in Vatican City is an example of such a free state. When we take the City of London, and we can speak of one of the biggest financial cores of the world, which for example determines the gold rate. They manipulate the gold rate on a daily basis, so they are able to fill people with money or empty them altogether. This makes London City a core player in the financial world. They are a very important mechanism in the bigger scheme, when we are talking about the pyramid, because we were talking about the structure of the BIS in Basel.
Bank of International Settlements in Basel.
then IMF and World Bank, then the central banks like the Federal Reserve in America and others.
Centrale banken, dus ook de Federal Reserve in Amerika en al die andere. Daaronder krijg je
Then the
dus
regular
gewone banken.
banks, but also stock
Maar je hebt
market
dus ook
centers.
beurscentra's. Hè? En het gaat in
We
dit
are
geval
now
dus
talking
overal
about these
over
free
prijsstaatjes.
states with
Dat zijn
immunity from everyone.
onvindbare staatjes. Die
Free
staatjes
states where
die
nothing
niets
and
met
no
iemand
one can do
hier op
anything
aarde
against
kan
this,
doen.
included the
Hè?
people
Ook
working for
personeel,
these
de mensen die
institutes.
ervoor werken.
They also got immunity.
Maar staan die dus
Zijn
op
allemaal
hetzelfde niveau
Are they
als
on
de
the same
punten van
level
die
as BIS?
bank,
Nee.
zeg
No,
maar?
BIS
Wordt vanuit de
delegates
BIS
the
wordt het
execution of
allemaal
instructions to the
gedelegeerd. Dat is
others,
het
the
hoofdverantwoordelijke.
headquarter of the
En van
headquarters.
daaruit wordt
And
zeg
from
maar
out of BIS
in
all
alle lagen
instructions are entered and
die
set to all
eronder
the
hangen,
layers below.
worden dus de instructies ingevoerd.
All right, so
Dus ook de
also to
city.
the city.
Ook de city, ja.
Yes,
City, en het wordt
indeed. They
allemaal
are all
vanuit
instructed from the
de
top.
BIS,
Daar
vanuit de
geregeld.
top wordt het geïnstrueerd. We hebben het
So,
net
to
gehad
pick
over
up
de
from the
gewone
regular
banken, die
banks,
hangen daar weer
we
onder.
just mentioned, under them we find the
Daaronder hangen de
multinationals and then below we find the
daaronder hangen de
governments.
regeringen. En daaronder
And
hangen
finally under them we
wij,
find ourselves, the
mensen,
people,
het echte
the
mens.
real life.
En
And one of the
het
mechanisms
mechanisme
they
die ze dus
use,
gebruiken,
something we have
dat is
accepted as
inderdaad
normal,
iets wat we
is the
heel
interest
aanzien.
rate.
Dat is een rentecomponent. Hè?
In our society,
Geld
money
wordt
is
namelijk in
created
deze
from a
samenleving
contract based
gecreëerd
on
op
debt.
schuld, op een schuldcontract. Hè, dus je hebt
So,
hier zeg maar
let us
papier.
take this piece of paper. You go to the
Je gaat naar de
bank.
bank,
We
dat kennen
all
we
are
allemaal.
familiar with this
Je vraagt een
principle
lening
and
aan, een
ask for a
hypotheek.
loan or a
Je zet je
mortgage.
handtekening
And you put
op
your
het moment dat jij je
signature.
handtekening
The moment you
zet,
do this,
wordt
they
er aan de ene
create a
kant
debt on
een
one
schuld
side on your
aangemaakt,
bank
dan
account and a
de bank
credit on
een
the other
hypotheek
side.
en aan de andere kant een tegoed.
The credit
Het
goes to
tegoed
whatever
gaat
you were
naar
trying to
hetgene
buy,
wat je gaat
car,
kopen, het huis of
house,
de auto of wat
etc.
dan ook.
The
En de
debt is
schuld blijft
yours
bij
from
jou.
now on,
Maar op
so
die
out
manier
of
wordt
nowhere
vanuit
they
de BIS
digitally
het
created
digitaal
money.
geld gecreëerd.
That's
Dat is
how
het
they create
alle
all the
geld
money in
op
the
aarde
world, based on
gecreëerd
debt.
is op basis van een schuldcontract.
That
Dat
is
is
only
waar.
one part.
Dat is
This is an
meer
economy
meer
based on
gebaseerd op
debt.
schuld. Maar
But
er zit
there's
ook een
also a
component aan
component that you could call
gebruikskosten,
usage
zou je het kunnen noemen,
costs,
rente.
interest
In de
rates.
economie
Then
wordt
in
daarvan
school with
gevind dat
economics
daar
they teach
spaargelden
you that there are
tegenover staan.
savings on the opposite because someone worked really hard for it. So, it makes sense that he receives something for the money he
Geld
lends
dat
to
hij
someone
uitgegeven
else.
heeft. Nou, dat is
Well,
niet waar.
all of that isn't true.
Het gaat erom
But
dat
what
die
it is about is that
rentecomponent
this interest rate of 5% a year on average
dat die
was not
mee
created in the
is in
contract
dat
of debt.
contract, in dat schuldcontract. Dat betekent dat dat ergens
This
anders in
means
een
they
ander
have to take the
schuldcontract
interest out of
weggegeven
some other
wordt.
contract, which
Dat is
causes
het
the
verschil
start of the global
in
shortage,
tekort wat je
leading to
schuldt
competition all over the world and virtually creates all misery we experience amongst the
bijna alle
people,
ellende
in
die
society.
ontstaat onder de mensen in de samenleving. Want er
There
wordt
is a continuous
constant
stream of this 5%
5%
interest rate
gemiddeld
that is taken from the bottom of the pyramid and whisked away
zakken
to the top
over
capital.
naar het kapitaal.
When we do the math, 5 times 10 years. After 10 years it is 50%, after 20 years a 100%. The shortage is
Dus we
just
komen
keep
steeds grotere
increasing.
tekorten.
To solve this
Om
they
dat
keep
op te lossen
creating
wordt
debt
dus steeds
contract
meer
based on
schuld
debt
op schuld,
contract
contract
worldwide in all the layers,
wereldwijd,
people,
ook onder
government,
banken,
companies,
in alle
etc.
lagen, regeringen, mensen, bedrijven, noem het maar op. Schuld op
Debt on
schuld,
debt on
schuld op schuld,
debt,
om die
to cover
gaten
the
van dat
holes they whisked
onttrekkelijke
away 5% leaves. They are sucking the real value, resources, out of the world, like a bunch of vampires. That is what it is. In 20 years, they already stole 100% of the real value. This is what causes the national debts to increase. You will see everywhere, with individuals, that those debts keep growing. Then reports start showing up, like Oxfam Novib, after a global research did show that 8 people own as much as half the people in this world. How is that possible? It's not just speculation, it's the interest rate that takes the real actual value and adds it to the capital at the top. Last thing about this pyramid, you have rules, laws, armies, police services, fiscal services, name them. You have all these rules and laws and organizations on the other side that ensure the bottom layer, real life, stays where it is, to make sure they don't end up with 7 million in the top. They don't want that, so it's tightly closed.
Dus het is allemaal dichtgetimmerd.
As long as people don't realize how this works, how they're deceived, how they're being robbed, how the real value, their value, is taken away from them to enrich the rich even further, as long as people don't see this, as long as they are not aware, nothing will change.
Totally agree with him. I'm thinking it might be harder for people to follow. And so here's an English version of another interview he did. There are people saying that he's dead. And in any accounts that I've seen, he's not dead. So someone correct me if I'm wrong.
Remember the moment we both were there on stage in the Netherlands, in Breda. And you asked me some questions about how kids are raised up in, I don't call them high society. I call them actually the most lowest societies you can have on this planet.
Yeah.
But most of the people think they are the highest powers on Earth, and that's because of they are holding actually most of the assets of this world, most of the property. They own actually the whole world now, nearly. It's just a few parts who are not theirs. It's like, let's say the 99.99% they own now. That started a long time ago. But we have this talk on stage about children who are born in this, well, old world powerful families. And it's not only my story, it's also the story of them, because they all were born, and on the moment they were born, like me, like all the other children on Earth, there was nothing wrong. It was fine. It was not that you come in this planet and you start to play with another child, or you say, no, you're a Muslim, I don't play with you. That bullshit is coming up later on in our lives, that we start to separate us from each other. But in the beginning, when we come from the source of light, we are all connected, and we all are a sort of unity and diversity. But to get people in track of the old powerful system, to be getting a real career in the old world, like your father or mother are the most powerful ones on this planet who decide to destroy a country or not, they have to prepare you for this job, for this role. And this kind of preparing was more or less the same like I was prepared. In my case, it was not really done on purpose, because my father didn't have plans for me, because he was not one of the rulers of this planet. But because of his damage, he was damaged as well before the war and during the Second World War. So a damaged child becoming a father, doing actually the same, also damaging me. And that was so heavily that I'm in the position now to confirm because of my own experience in life, because my first 11 years of my youth were really destroying the child. My child was becoming the inner child, completely protected in a heavy bunker, and a bunker who even can survive atomic wars. That's how far you become inside of yourself, locked up, developing a sub-person who is not giving any shit about life on this planet, actually having real joy to destroy life on this planet. And that's all because of being in a program of destruction from the beginning of your life till later on. And for me, it was till my 11th. But later on, I jump now a bit forwards. Later on, when I was in the position in my first life, the last 5 years of my first life. It's ended in the end of 1994. The last 5 years, when I was in the real position to get in the financial world in the highest positions to serve them, the powers that be, the old powers, I was becoming friends with not all of them, but some of them. And when you become friends with one of your clients, you start to recognize each other based on the stories we both share about our youth. I didn't say it now, but I get it already in my body, all these vibrations, because it's very heavy, this kind of things. In the so-called elite, because they are not elite, but how to call them, the powers that be. If they get children, sometimes the first one is sacrificed for more power. And if they don't do this, the children they raise up, they put them, for example, in electric caves to break them, to break the child in all the way they can. This is in the system of being trained to be later on one of the most powerful persons on this planet. First, they break you down, and they do it from the beginning. And they were doing it with me too, but separate from the real powers. But it's unbelievable, because sometimes people are saying, oh, the powers in this planet, they are reptilians. No. I know the stories, but they are not reptilians. They are so cold-blooded, so-called, they are so in the freezer because they were trained that way, like they did with me, with my father and my family situation. They trained me to be the coldest one on earth, with my consciousness in the freezer, and not on 18 degrees, but on 100 degrees. So when I was coming out of this hell, this family situation, completely beaten up, tortured, emotional, physical, whatever, well, think about real horrible things and you get more or less there. For them, the powers on this planet is the same story. And the fun, well, it's not funny, but the most funny part of this all is that the parents who are doing this with the children, they are convinced, really convinced, that they love their children and they are giving the best they can to prepare them for their role in the future. They really love their children. So
sacrificing children as well, even with the trans movement, those are possibly the new age sacrifices.
If you're not used to it, it's completely crazy to hear this and to think about what I'm saying. It's compare it with this. If you are a father and a mother and you get children, in my first life I did the same. You get this vaccines program and you love your children and you are not aware, and you give your children the vaccines because you are doing the best for your child. In the meanwhile, that's in my second life, I become aware of the prescriptions for doctors downloaded by the healthcare division of European Union. And then if you read the descriptions where the medics access to have, and you read all the additives who are in these vaccines, then you become aware, like, oh my God, I don't want to give my children this anymore. So with this example, I want to make clear that if you don't know better, you really believe you're giving your child the best you can. And with the vaccines, in my first life, with my first two children, I gave them. And their immune system is damaged. They're so-called healthy, but not really healthy. If I compare my first two children with my last two children, wow, big difference in the immune system. But that's just an example of what I'm talking about. If it's about the powers who are where I was working for, and with some I become friends, I mean, they were going through the same hell or worse than I did. And this is the only reason why they are able, like I was, to destroy life on Earth. Really doesn't, we didn't care about the people in general. They were products, they were trash, they were just use them, fuck them, and throw it away. That's human people. And in my first life, when I came out of my youth, because when I was 9, there was an organization who is watching children, a sort of childcare organizations. They noticed through school that everything was going really, really bad for me. And there was an investigation, and then they discover all these horrible things. So they put me out of the family in a place where they take care of people, children in this case, who are heavily damaged by child abuse and sacrifice rituals and all horrible things. So I was coming, when I was 9, I came in a Catholic, it was organized by Catholics, center to protect the child against all the violence of the past. And guess what? There it was actually that much of hell that I really start to cry for my father and mother, because there it was normal to abuse the children, and this was done by nuns and by brothers, so male and female, and they used the available children, and I was included. And in the beginning, you really don't know what is happening with you, and you start screaming for your father, who was a monster, and your mother. And the crazy thing about that is it damaged you completely. Again, because the first year was hell, but you start to discover sometimes things are also pleasant. So then you get completely mixed up because you're forced to be in sexual rituals and all kind of crazy things. Some people were wearing masks because they also invited guests. Some were not with masks. Later on, when you are adult, sometimes you recognize these powerful people who are joining this kind of rituals and sexual abuse. It's all mixed up. So when I was released after my 11th, when my mother was out of a divorce, I was already a completely adult, and my child was completely locked up, like I shared before, in a big bunker. So there he is, Ronald, 12 years old, coming home to mother who is just divorced, still a mess because she was also very much suffering, not having enough food on the table. And then I start my career to be independent and arranging money. And that was my start. And I'm not telling this like an excuse that if you become criminal, that if you have a rough youth, then you have a big and huge excuse to be criminal. No, it's not an excuse. It was my decision to choose that path. I'm responsible for that. That was coming up in the period between 9 and 11. All these thoughts and decisions were made in that period. When I was coming out, 12, it was really starting to do it. Because the situation of my mother was also an excuse, like she didn't have a lot of money and we have some family support, but I started already stealing food in shops and finding money to get a bit of extra support. But yes, you're right. The real turn in this, the hate, because that was all in between 9 and 11, when I have all these child abuse things, these sexual things. But to practice your decisions was when I was 12. And yes, I hated actually, or nearly everyone on this planet, especially the adults. It was not in the case with my mother, but even with my mother, I was building up already a sort of distance. Like if she was coming too near to me, I start already to go in a sort of defense. So yes, in that period, the blueprint was already completely clear. I became a hater of the human race. And my final goal was to destroy everything, including myself, of course. That was my main goal. And the way to this main goal was to become the most rich and powerful person on this planet, because if you are the most rich and powerful person on this planet, you can push the buttons to destroy. So yes, in a nutshell, that's the first part of my youth. The rest after it is I can share, of course, too, like how I became from my 12 till nearly 33, because 94 I was still 32. But I mean, the 20 years I was building up myself with this goal, I nearly managed it. Nearly. I was close. Because I was really in the last 5 years, I was really on my way, and I'm getting more and more power. Then, unfortunately, I'm talking now if I'm in my first life, because then it was unfortunately, they start to invite me for something who really was cracking me on that moment. And that was that in being invited. I was also in the Church of Satan, and they were worshipping Lucifer. And for me, it was really a joke. But afterwards, I know it was not a joke, this whole thing. But when they made this invitation, and the first time I put this in the world, wow, it was like a volcano, like a relief, but the emotions, everything was coming out. The first time I was sharing this in my life, it was really huge in public. That was about the invitation to sacrifice children. That was really, that was, and I mean, wow. That was my breaking point in my career. It was not my turning point, but it was my breaking point, because I couldn't fulfill my role anymore. I was falling apart step by step. But between the 12 and the 32 is a huge story, of course, of things, what I did in my life to become a top criminal, serving the big money for the top players of this world. Everything, I mean, you know what it was? Everything was bad. Everything was evil. I believed all the bad things, the black things, the evil things, the dark things, however you want to call it, is in the human themselves. So it was including me, because I was not better than anyone else. So I was actually blaming myself as well for all the horror. Of course, afterwards, I can look at it completely different, but it's the first life. I'm now in the first life, so I'm talking out of the first life. It's now sometimes a bit difficult because, of course, in my second life, after my rebirth, I become more and more aware. My consciousness was growing. So the old part was mixed with the new part. And then afterwards, of course, you understand that there was nothing to blame yourself. Of course, you made maybe the wrong decisions, but you get a bit of compassion with yourself. You can forgive yourself as well. Like I was also forgiven by the people who I I met afterwards, also in my second life, I start to meet people who are becoming direct or indirect a victim of my actions in my first life. And that's more than coincidence. I was once with a friend in a dinner, and he had a new girlfriend. And we were talking about my work when we dropped the Italian lira as an attack to attack the economy of Italia, because we got a lot of bets on it, on the destruction, temporary destruction. And his new girlfriend told me that she still knows the period I was doing that, because her family and the family company was completely destroyed by the actions I did. And so many years later, you get through one of your friends who has a new girlfriend, you get confronted with the other side, the victims of your actions. This is beyond coincidence. How is this possible? I was facing this many times. Maybe I did too much destruction. I don't know. That it's not so absurd to meet your victims of the past, but for me it was really like, wow, how is this possible? And this was not once. When I was 12 and starting to do this little...
He's talking about banks, and I just wanted to bring up a point that Moose on the Loose, I haven't watched this video yet, posted 5 hours ago, but liberal housing nightmare, mortgage defaults skyrocket across Canada. I literally said this for the last few years now on the record. For anyone that purchased a home in the like the peak of like when it was good to buy, when there were still lower interest rates, like the stress test wasn't as high, etc., and prices were higher. So people even selling, again, there was a profit to that. But you can only your contract is up for renewal, like to remortgage your home. The limit is 5 years. And even in 2018, when I bought my home, I asked if I can do a 7-year, and RBC said no. Major banks don't do that. And it's frustrating, right? Because then you're locked in, depending on if you're in a closed fixed or an open variable. Anyway, I won't get into that. But and so now is the time for people, like most people do the 5-year contract, and so it's up for for remortgaging. And people that bought their homes in 2021 and in early 2022, before the interest rates got higher, etc., they their interest rates might even friggin' double. Mine did. I had to sell at the worst friggin' time, but again, I was fleeing a friggin' area where my house was doxxed and people were anyway harassing me and more. It was just not a good place to be. And so I did it where it was like around where I had to remortgage anyways, and my mortgage rate almost doubled. So what I'm paying now for my mortgage is almost double what I was paying before. It's frustrating. And so now people this year and next year are going to be defaulting, unfortunately, on their mortgages, because people are not going to be able to, again, have their mortgage increase by, anywhere between like a third and a half. Like it was a lot. It's a lot. Anyways, back to him.
Arrangements to get enough food on the table. I was already collecting, for example, all the items of World War II in that period. So that is in the 70s. I was collecting this kind of things, and especially the things from the Germans, because they were of the most value. And in that period, I also dig in the country to find old war ammunition and all those kind of things. So I start to collect things of the Second World War. And then on flea markets, I start buying and selling this kind of items. I also start to steal out of shops cartoons. And then I had 100 cartoons to sell on the flea market. I was stealing a lot of toy things. I was just stealing the whole year in shops everywhere, and nobody was catching me. And I collect a lot of things to sell on the flea markets. And as a child, of course, so innocent, you get away of it. and nobody was paying attention of what I was arranging because I did it already in the shadow. I also in springtime I cut in the cities and in the places where I lived in the villages when the flowers were coming up. In general, you have these fields where the people from City Hall they have it in the public service to have all the flowers, the flowers who are coming up in the public gardens, and I was cutting them all. You know, when the flowers were coming up, I cut them all. So it was always a mystery where the flowers were going, but I cut them all and put them in a small bouquet, and I was going ding dong to the doors, ding dong. Do you want to sell? Do you want to buy this nice flowers for the good goals I was representing? Like I just imagine something like the poor kids of the third world or whatever. But the good goal was myself. So that I can go on for hours, of course, but this was just the beginning. Then, when I was 14, I think more or less 14, I started to copy money, make money myself. So I put a Dutch bill, I put it on the window, and then I put a blanco white paper over it, and with pencils, color pencils, I start drawing every detail of this billiard, and it took me several days to create, for example, 25 guilders on my own. And they were so nice and so good copied, handmade. I gave them to my mother, and she was sometimes going out with another friend to a bar, so it was a bit shady, dark, and she gave it to the barman to buy their drinks, and they accepted because it was so good of quality. She didn't do it. She called the bartender back like, ho, 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 didn't you notice? And then, of course, he was putting it through a light and discovered there was no watermark. So for her, it was just a joke and saying, yeah, my son is making these kind of things. So for her, it was completely innocent, but not for me, not at all. Because I gave them out myself as well. You know, so I create my own money and gave it out in shops. But I was also on school because that was also needed. And most of the time, because of my messy life, I was kicked out of the class. But when I have the exams, I always pay the best students money. So when the exams were there, I just sit near the bright guys, the ones who were really studying, and I paid them, and I copied the answers who were needed to have a good number in your exams. So this is how I arranged all my diplomas when in my youth. Then I have to go to the military. That was by law arranged in Holland, but I arranged that also in a different way, like becoming a professional soldier in a training to become Unteroffizier. What is in English? It's not the officer, but the one between. So choosing this path, I was called for a tour. I was called for a tour that was arranged by law. But to go in a path of going for professional, you get higher paid already, although you're still going for your tour, but applying for professional, you get already higher paid. Then I choose also to be placed in abroad, not in Holland, but in Germany, in a NATO camp with Canadians and English, and so you get extra paid. So I was always looking for the money, how I get more and more paid. And then I get this tax-free cigarettes and liquors, alcohol, and all that very cheap, tax-free things available. And I start to buy them and transport them illegal over the borders to Holland to sell it to friends and family because they really want to buy it because it was cheaper than they have to buy it in Holland. So even in the military and after the military, I was starting to be quite involved in illegal transport, smuggling, tax-free cigarettes and alcohol, liquors. But when I came out of the army, I started also to register myself in the Chamber of Commerce with car dealing, because I want to explain or to cover my real life. Because when I was in the army, I could explain, hey, I have my high salary because I'm so-called in training for professional military. I'm abroad, so I get all these risk payments. So I could explain how I get all this money. Also a bit out of, well, these illegal things. But out of the army, I had to register myself officially with car dealing. And later also with import-export, and even with a fashion line for for ladies. It was for ladies. We did some fashion, and we did it from Istanbul. But all this import-export, this car dealing, and even this lady fashion line, who was distributed to franchise companies. Was all cover up. Of course, it made money, but the real money was coming from the underworld, the gray world, the black world, the illegal trading I did, because it started with the smuggling. But you know, before you know, you get also weapons offered, you get drugs offered, you get all the things who are available in this in the black community or in the criminal communities. So step by step, you go deeper and deeper and deeper. And if you're good in the things you're doing, the circles are not that huge. So you're starting to climb, your start to rise. And when I was around 25, I get already jobs offered by secret services, also from Russia. And of course, now we have these anti-campaigns on Russia. So when I'm saying Russia, whoa, another one, you see, Russians are bad. No, they are not bad at all. It's inside of the humans. And in that time, when I was 25, I get jobs offered to dump in the international market American dollars. But these American dollars were not printed in America by the Federal Reserve. They were printed in the East. And they were distributed through Russia, through the secret services, to top criminals or criminals who have great ambitions to drop them in trades. Like when you have, in my case, I had army dealers. So arm dealers, so weapon dealers, drugs dealers who are in bigger quantity dealing, and they were able to buy this 100% top quality American dollars from us with discount. And of course, I had my commission too, because between the buying and selling, there was commission for me too. And this is the way how we get millions and later higher amount of monies. We get it in the market through the illegal circuit of arm dealers, weapon dealers, and drugs dealers, and terrorist organizations. All this, well, not highest, but quite some amount of money flow. I get involved of this as well, and later on you get from other secret services the same story. You get also a lot of drugs and other things offered. So you're climbing up the ladder, and if you succeed in all the missions you do, like, okay, he deserves a medal, he is doing this job because it takes a lot of guts, and you have your nerve system has to be top. It's high level playing already, but still it was low level, the thing, if you compare it with the last 5 years. This year I was invited by the International Tribune of Natural Justice in London to testify about human trafficking, child trafficking, organ harvesting organs. So organ trafficking, child abuse, child sacrifice, all the things were there. And the third day, when I was actually leaving to catch my plane, I get in contact with someone who was, in the time I was involved with this top quality dollars, because the quality of these dollars was actually better than the original ones from America. Yeah, no, it was only, the Americans discovered it only by the numbers, the serial numbers. That's how because they have a registration of the serial numbers of their own prints. So when they get huge amounts of brand new, better dollars than they have themselves, then they start to become aware of this attack, because the reason behind this was all economic warfare. It's economic warfare. And also the Americans were doing the same with the ruble against the Russians. So in this level, all the countries are printing the currencies of other countries to attack them in an economic way. But I didn't care about this. The destruction was for me enough, and making money as well. I was only interested in destruction and making money. They didn't succeed, by the way. I mean, America is still there, Russia is still there, Iran is still there. All the countries are still there, but the motivation you have behind it is, okay, now we have a chance. If I was putting the American dollar on the market, of course you see a big power, and a big power can be destroyed if you have enough extra money on the market. You get a hyperinflation, you get crisis, and you get a country on their knees. I knew that already from that time. It was like you have a high quality wine. If you put in enough water, the value of the wine is gone. It doesn't taste well anymore, and you can't sell it anymore. And that's what you create with more money in the market than registered and given out by the printing of America themselves.
All right, we've talked a lot about this stuff.
That's in shock. Like, what are you doing? You're burning 1,000 guilders. I'm working the whole month for this. And then I put it just in the estuary, like, oh, I don't care. You know, and you have a big laugh about it with your colleagues to humiliate the people, to shock the people who are working their ass off the whole month for this amount of money, and you put it in their face to light the cigarettes with the salary of 1 month. Money was nothing. It was toilet paper. Because it was coming in daily. Who cares? Who cares? So the value was not, later on, the money was just a tool to do whatever you want. It's the same with having cars. Then you have 1 car, then you have 2 cars.
Real estate.
In the end, you have 3 cars, 5 cars.
Yachts.
Whatever you
mansions,
buy, whatever
islands.
you do, when you're completely empty, like I was, you're only filling up your holes, and it's an impossible thing you're doing, and you need more. So you're starting to serve the monster of greed. You need more. And this is why the people who are now in the trillions, they still feel poor. They're still alone. They feel empty. They have nothing. They're scared. Most of them want out, but they're in their own prison. They don't have anything. This is why they are so extreme powerful, so-called powerful, so extreme wealthy. They are the most poor people of this planet. I was one of them, and not in the same level, because I was serving them. I was not one of the masters myself. I was serving them. But this is it.
Yeah, pyramidal power structure.
The power structure you're talking about is a structure of a pyramid, really pyramid. And in all the layers, they have involvement in all the layers. So also when we have all this alternative and awaken, I don't want to make people paranoid, but you have really look carefully about what kind of fruits are the trees really giving. So you need to know background. You need to know the people. They're everywhere. One of the documents I still recommend, not because I'm an anti-Semite, because I really love all the human beings on this planet, including the 12 tribes of Israel, the original tribes. The protocols of the elders of Zion gives you really the blueprint of everything I worked.
It's a bit of a propaganda piece. I've done videos on that as well.
For, and I was involved. And in this document, you can read how the structure is created everywhere. In universities, in the schools, in our education system, in the politics, whatever you can imagine, it's involved. And they have influence everywhere. In opposition, it doesn't matter. Everywhere, there are...
I will say that radical Zionists, though, they also, with the Hasbara, there's a lot of propaganda, especially Western media. It's a lot of propaganda there. Project Esther, the Heritage Club, and Mark Levine, and these types. Yeah, speaking out against specific people, it doesn't make me an anti-Semite. I'm going to be clear, and I don't think that these people are actually real Jewish people anyways. And I am a believer in God, and I do believe there's a lot to, again, being a Christian and Christianity and just how it has been practiced, especially European, and the influences it has had on societies, the most developed, progressive societies throughout history. And removing the king, removing the Pope from being like the absolute rulers of people, right? Our relationship is with God and inherent freedoms that we have on earth, and not and the king doesn't speak for God. The Pope doesn't speak for God, if that makes any sense.
Are involved. The point is, the involvement they have most of the time influence people on important positions in organizations. So if you have, for example, Amnesty International, wow, good organization. Yes, it is. And 99% of the people are really integer. They are honest. They are really working with the heart. But it's the 1% who is sitting just on one of the key positions, who is creating this influence of their higher powers. It's everywhere. So don't get paranoid. What I was sharing was, of course, a mixture of my whole life, because in my first life, I really had a big laugh about this Satanist and this Luciferian and the creator of heaven and earth. All these religions and beliefs were for me bullshit. I really believed the evil is inside of us. But yes, of course, when I start to die and having my first out-of-body experience, not believing in the beginning what was going on with me, but yeah, later on you start to testify about what they were doing with you, and it was confirmed, you know, step by step. In my second life, I was becoming more involved in being also myself spiritual, embracing spirituality, studying a lot of holy books, and then a new life start to appear, and then you start to discover that there is much more than only this, what I call fourth dimension. You have the length, you have the width, you have height, but you have also time.
Yeah.
That's the time frame is the fourth dimension. But then you start to discover that we are the cross point of the multi-dimensions and frequencies. And the moment you start to discover that, your awareness starts to grow, and you start to be more and more involved in spirituality. You start to sense that there is really something going on in the other frequencies and dimensions, and then you start.
He talks about evil, and I think there's something to that about being misaligned. And the more we feed the good and try to live by like the fundamental principles that have been laid out regarding people's different interpretations of the creation story, but there's different codes or ways to live. That makes it where you're feeding the good or you're feeding the evil, right? So people that lie, cheat, steal, idolize people instead of God, like worship people instead of God, or worship yourselves. People that, like see the 7 deadly sins as something to be experienced here on earth, and just complete misinterpretations of these codes, like the Noahide codes, whatever, or the Noah codes. There's so many different codes out there, but again, there's a lot of similarities to the fundamental ones. And I think that this does need to be a learned. I don't think that it is inherent. Depending on, again, like the person's situation, right? Like there's so many different factors at play that can induce trauma into an individual based on even things like weather conditions or threats from animals. And so if your primary needs are not met, then again, there is like varying degrees of trauma that can be induced just by those, again, not so people that are living, in war-torn societies. Like this is, again, something that can cause trauma where it limits people from like accessing their higher levels of consciousness or their higher levels of emotions. They're not living in fear. They're not living with anger. These are the lower level ones. They're not evolved where they're thinking about compassion and empathy and love and patience and courage, etc. Where you're vibrating, like it would have like a stronger magnetic vibration or stronger electromagnetic fields because we all emit them. And and so feeding the good, like caring, compassion, being of service and sacrifice for your community, being like a creator, not a destroyer of life, even planting gardens, for example, or like caring for animals, whatever. These are good things, and trying to abide by, again, that like what we call the 10 Commandments in Christianity. Is feeding the good. Going against that is feeding the bad and makes people evil. I hope that makes sense.
Also to know
perception is reality.
That there are low frequency beings, what we call now the fallen angels of the jinns, who are really serving a sort of master. Like you have a creator of heaven and earth, we call that the light manifestation, and you have really a dark manifestation, and that guy or entity is named, for example, as Lucifer. So I just start in my own last 22 years. I step by step I start to discover all the dimensions and frequencies based on my own experience. All the experience I didn't believe myself. So for me now, it's more than a belief. It's really knowing, based on practical experience, that we really have to face the fact that besides the fourth dimension, we have this interaction with other intellects, other beings. And in my case, it was developing in a positive way, even getting not only a monologue, but also a dialogue. Like sometimes I have a question, and before I speak out the question, the answer is already given. And of course, you can freak out with your brains and thinking like, oh, this is your high.
All right, let's.
Now, the real magicians of this world, you get already a little bit of a taste of the powers I'm talking about, who are working through humans. This high power humans are then hosts of interdimensional beings.
All right.
And later confirmed from others to create your own space. And okay, if I start a movement, I'm only one in my own space with my movement. Oh, changing the world, declaration of peace, everybody is laughing. But if people start to join my space, it will become your space as well. And if it's 10, it's a bigger space. Is it 1,000? It's bigger. And so it can grow and grow and grow and grow. And then
these interdimensional beings and reptilians and things like that, like I'm not necessarily subscribed to that. If I had proof, again, I've looked into this stuff, then obviously I'm open to changing my mind. But disturbances with our electromagnetic fields, our magnetic fields, creates a weaker field, and again, with that disturbance. So things like drinking alcohol, smoking pot, things like that, it does, although alcohol definitely disrupts the field more. And even things like sugar, like and even prescription medications, etc., can disrupt the field, your aura, whatever you want to call it. And where we're already like more inclined to be vibrating at like the lower levels, what we're calling like these evil levels. And we should be living in balance. So even with the 7 deadly sins, like there are extremes that we should, like, again, balance out, right? So even when you look at greed, for example, being too greedy is absolutely like not good for yourself or society. And then being too thrifty is also, again, it's like not good for yourself or society in many ways. Things like lust, being too lustful, being a whore, not good for society or yourself, but then also being too prude or like not ever, having like experiencing even love, or procreating, like at that extreme, like that's also, again, not good for yourself or society, possibly, depending on the situation. And examples for all the like the 7 deadly sins, even with wrath, it could be like at the extremes, it could be like extreme revenge, and then just like anyone in your path, whether they be good or bad, right? Like they experience your wrath. But there could be, again, people that need to be held accountable for committing crimes. So a certain degree of punishment required in order to mitigate behaviors or to protect societies from the influence of these people. And I'm going to show some more Instagram videos on interesting science things, and then I do have to go because I'm going to go for a lunch. I've been cooking a lot lately, so it's nice to actually go out and eat at a relatively healthy place. So it says here that, wait, this YouTuber actually recorded light moving. And again, it's based on the electromagnetic interaction.
The camera that I built last year that shoots at 1 billion frames per second. What could possibly be cooler than that? A camera that shoots at 2 billion frames per second. This beam of light is going to ricochet back and forth until it finally misses a mirror and hits the wall down there. And this is what that looks like at 2 billion frames per second. Light moves about 6 inches or 15 centimeters per frame of this video. This beam of light is traveling at the universe's speed limit. Light in any reference frame will never move any faster or any slower than this speed. But what happens if I move the camera? This clip looks dramatically different. The light traveling away from the camera appears much slower, and the light traveling back towards the camera looks dramatically faster, like almost instant. And that's like really weird. This is a camera that I built last year that shoots at 1 billion frames.
Anyway, that was interesting. Where's the next one here? Again, the man went missing after making this free energy generator. I don't, like, that's not fact checked. I'm only showing you this video because, again, free energy. Enter creates a plasma field in a magnetic field. Sort of like what light is. Okay, anyway, cool stuff. On that note, though, I will leave it at that, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your Sunday.